Hello and welcome to the Ontario Camps Association Standards Training. If you don't already know me, I'm Jen Gilbert, OCA's Manager of Operations and Membership. My colleague Rob Crew, Coordinator of Outreach and Special Projects, and I are excited to present this training on behalf of the OCA Standards Committee. OCA approved. What wonderful and powerful words! OCA accredited camps and outdoor education centers are OCA approved. This means that in addition to their compliance to over 600 health and safety standards, they adhere to the requirements of wellness, diversity, opportunities, inclusivity, qualifications, safety, programming, and education. It means camps and outdoor education centers are continuously meeting industry standards with the utmost safety and care of campers in mind. It means parents and guardians can trust they're sending campers to a safe camp or outdoor education center. Once fully accredited, camps and outdoor education centers agree and have the opportunity to use this logo in their marketing materials, including their brochures and website. I've seen lots of email signatures with this logo as well.
Did you know that the OCA standards have been in existence since 1965? OCA standards offer camps and outdoor education centers a benchmark for sound operation and administration and are reviewed each year by the Standards Review Committee.
The Standards Review Committee?
Yes, the committee monitors changes regulated by federal, provincial, and municipal government, as well as current recreational practices. It provides recommendations to the Board of Directors and OCA members on changes to the standards. OCA members are encouraged to submit their standards feedback at any time to the OCA office.
Did you know that the OCA provides support and direction to camp and outdoor education center owners and operators, that OCA influences legislation and objectively evaluates camping excellence? And this is the tip of the iceberg. To read about OCA's history in detail, check out the introduction section of the OCA standards.
And don't forget about OCA's Honorary Life members. These members continue to be active in the OCA and truly believe in the importance of preserving our rich history.
Join us today as we go through everything you need to know to be successful in your standards visit. Whether you're a visitor, camp, or outdoor education center being visited, there's a ton of great info for everyone.
We'll discuss the new hybrid visit, the pre- and post-visit, OCA standards, and how to stay safe during COVID-19. We believe that standards visits can be done safely, with minimal risk, and are introducing the hybrid visit. Visits will be in two parts. Part 1 is the virtual review, and Part 2 is an on-site visit. Details are in Video 3, the hybrid standards visit.
After you've watched all 8 videos, you'll complete an online quiz and your training will be finished for this year.
If you're being visited before you start the next video, please ask yourself, am I the individual who is operationally responsible for the interpretation, enforcement, and compliance of OCA standards? If you've answered yes, continue this training. If you've answered no, you'll need to share these videos and the quiz link with the individual that meets the criteria of your operation. Your camp or outdoor education center's requirements to complete standards training will be met once the training is taken by the proper individual.
So we're all on the same page. Let's define directors and visitors, titles we'll refer to many times throughout this training. A camp or outdoor education center director is the individual who is operationally responsible for the interpretation, enforcement, and compliance of the OCA standards. A visitor is the senior visitor assigned to the camp or outdoor education center who completes the virtual review and the on-site visit. Only one visitor per standards visit has been assigned this year, and OCA visitor responsibilities are non-transferable. Finally, we also refer to answer sheets quite often. Those being visited log into the online answer sheets to answer yes, no, or not applicable to the standards, and write explanations for any no or not applicable answers. There are 2 steps to answer sheet completion, referred to as the Step 1 submission and Step 2 finalization. Of great importance here is that answer sheets should be filled out based on your year-round operations, not just your summer or fall programming.
So, if I operate a camp and also rent my facility for a family reunion, I'd answer the standards based on those programs?
You've got it.
That's good to know. Let's begin the training. Before we dive into the practical side of standards visits, it's important for you to understand the philosophy of the visitation process. There are 4 key points. Number 1, we follow best camping practices approved by OCA members. You, as an OCA member, vote on the proposed amendments to the standards presented by the Standards Review Committee each year. You have an opportunity to be involved in the entire amendment process each year, so these are your standards. 2, camps are visited by fellow camp professionals. There are 3 types of visitor levels: intro, junior, and senior. And we'd encourage everyone from any accredited camp or outdoor education center, no matter your experience, to volunteer. You can contact Jen for more information. 3, every camp is unique. The OCA is so proud of its diversity in its membership. It's especially important that your answer sheets are detailed enough that the Standards Committee, most of whom likely have never been to your camp or outdoor education center, would be able to understand your operation. Don't leave assumptions up to us. For example, if your campers go on field trips, let us know where they're going and any other information that we may need to understand any no or not applicable answers you may have. And 4, the process is based on compliance demonstration. Although not a licensing or legislating body, the OCA is a regulatory body, and in recent years has increasingly understood the importance of being able to demonstrate compliance to the standards.
As a member of the Ontario Camps Association, your camp or outdoor education center commits to several agreement terms in your annual membership renewal. All agreement terms are important, and we're going to highlight a few here. The first, confirming you comply with OCA's current standards and any amendments to the standards that take place from time to time. You're committed to comply even if you disagree with aspects of the standards. Second, confirming to have your camp or outdoor education center visited. Third, letting the OCA know if your camp or outdoor education center has a change in ownership, directorship, or location, or if you've bought or sold a camp or outdoor education center. So, if the individual who is operationally responsible for the interpretation, enforcement, and compliance of OCA standards changes, a standards visit is required at the next opportunity.
I don't know about you, Jen, but I'm becoming quite used to using Zoom. It's to the point that I'm not sure I'll be able to find any pants that don't start with sweat in my closet.
Come to think of it, I'm not sure people will recognize me without my ceiling fan in the background. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing you in person again.
Intended only for the 2021 visits, the hybrid standards visit will consist of a more in-depth virtual review of documentation ahead of an in-person site visit or tour. The virtual review must occur no more than 7 days prior to the on-site visit and will include a review of answer sheets as well as documentation. Answer sheets must be submitted to the OCA office by June 15, 2021. The in-person on-site visit is to be scheduled on a single day when the camp or outdoor education center is in full operation and when the program activities are happening. And, hot off the press, the Standards Committee has prepared a 2021 Standards Visit Safety Guidance document that you must read.
The virtual review will take place in a location free from as much distraction and noise as possible, on a reliable video meeting platform of the director's choice. It's the director's responsibility to host the virtual review.
Directors and OCA visitors receive the OCA 2021 Compliance Checklist document, which outlines what documentation visitors will ask to see during the virtual review and what they're looking for during the on-site visit. Referring to this, directors should collect all relevant documentation in digital form to share with their OCA visitor. Access to these documents may be given during the virtual review or in advance at a director's discretion. We encourage advanced sharing via email or a shared online folder, as the visitor will require time to review the documents.
In addition to the camp or outdoor education center's own policies and procedures, sharing documents such as public health inspections, challenge course inspections, fire safety inspections, etc., will greatly assist both the director and the visitor to demonstrate and verify compliance, as well as save time.
There will be no video or audio recording of any part of the hybrid visit. If internet or technology capabilities are an issue, you should contact the OCA office.
At the on-site visit, the visitor will physically tour the facility, observe the program/activities in operation, and interview/speak with the director as appropriate. Unlike in non-COVID years, the tour should not be more than 1 hour, and there's no requirement to stay for a meal or chat with campers and staff.
The tour will be director-driven and needs to cover all applicable areas from the compliance checklist. The visitor should look for signs, rules, emergency numbers posted, occupational health and safety posters, etc.
The director and visitor will follow the camp or outdoor education center's health guidelines, or OCA's 2021 Standards Visit Safety Guidelines, whichever are stricter. Everyone should wear masks, a face covering that covers the nose and mouth, and stay at least 6 feet apart at all times during the visit. A face shield alone is not considered an appropriate face covering, and camps and outdoor education centers should accommodate visitors who are unable to wear masks and face coverings. During the visit, wash your hands frequently with soap and water, or use hand sanitizer if soap and water are not available. Minimize indoor time during the visit as much as possible. The visitor should maintain physical distance while observing camper cohorts. If this is not possible, then staff and campers should wear masks at all times if they are with a visitor.
What if a visitor is hungry?
The visitor should not plan to eat while on site. If this isn't possible, the visitor should bring their own food and eat outside.
When possible, OCA encourages all OCA visitors and directors to be vaccinated. However, vaccinated directors and visitors are not exempt from any safety precautions. There are 2 pages of written standards visit safety guidelines that you'll need to review prior to the visit. These guidelines include information on what to do pre-visit if experiencing any COVID-19 symptoms, if you've been in contact with a COVID-19 positive or suspected positive person, if there's a COVID-19 case or exposure at camp or the outdoor education center being visited, etc., as well as information on what to do post-visit if there's a positive case of COVID-19 at camp or the outdoor education center in the week following the in-person visit, or if the visitor tests positive for COVID-19 in the weeks following the visit.
After the tour, and on the day of the visit, the answer sheets will be finalized. This year, finalization will not include any unique finalization codes. When the director is logged into their online answer sheets and clicks the Finalize button, an email will be sent to them and their visitor, with a link each will need to click. Clicking the link acts as an electronic sign-off, indicating that the answer sheets have been reviewed and discussed, the virtual review and on-site visit have taken place, and no major issues remain unresolved. When both the director and visitor click their link, the answer sheets will be finalized and locked for the year.
If the answer sheets aren't submitted within 3 days, of the on-site visit. Unless the director has been in contact with the OCA office and/or there are emergency circumstances, there will be a penalty as determined by the Standards Committee.
Directors and visitors are encouraged to fill out the Standards Visit feedback form after their on-site visit, citing concerns, disagreements, questions, and more. The form provides the Standards Committee with helpful information when reviewing the camp or outdoor education center's answer sheets.
There's a space for you to share any confusion or feedback on the standards used by the Standards Review Committee. The feedback will be used to make the standards clear and easier to use.
Your feedback is very important and taken very seriously. If you are a visitor with concerns from the visit, fill out the feedback form and call the OCA office. Sometimes concerns can be quite stressful, even outside of a pandemic. For directors and visitors, their support and care for you at the OCA office.
Email your feedback form to Jen no later than 3 days following your visit. The fillable PDF form is included in your Standards Visit information package.
Now that you know what the hybrid visit looks like, let's talk about how you can prepare.
The Standards Committee begins the matching process in early March. Upon receiving your Standards Visit information package, the director and visitor confirm 3 mutually convenient dates. One for the virtual review, another for the on-site visit, and a third rainy day backup. These dates should be communicated to the OCA office by the deadline indicated in the package. The director sends the visitor their marketing information, such as a website link, and any documents to prepare for the virtual review. The director is not required, but is encouraged to pre-send documents for this virtual review. The director must complete Step 1 submission of answer sheets by June the 15th. Visitors, if you haven't received a copy of the Camp or Outdoor Education Center's answer sheets by June 15th, check your spam. Then contact the camp director, then the OCA office.
To summarize, in addition to standards training, there are a number of items to do prior to the visit. Check your Standards Visit information package for details. Number 1. Schedule 3 visit dates and notify the OCA office. 2. Confirm visit details, coordinate technology for the virtual review, as well as directions and a meeting time for the on-site visit. 3. Share and review the camp or outdoor education center's literature and marketing materials. 4. Review the 2021 standards and the OCA 2021 standards visit safety guidelines. 5. Directors complete the Step 1 submission of the online answer sheets by June 15th, and visitors review no and not applicable answers. 6. Directors prepare documentation to show compliance demonstration for the virtual review in accordance to the compliance demonstration checklist, a checklist to be used by the visitor during the virtual review and the on-site visit. 7. Directors arrange for board and staff involvement for the visit in accordance with theirs and OCA's COVID-19 safety guidelines. 8. Directors share their health screening process with the visitor. Rob, let's decide who is responsible, the director or the visitor. Question 1. Director or visitor? Who is responsible for reaching out to schedule the 3 visit dates and communicating the dates to the office?
The director?
Yes. Although the director's responsibility, if the visitor hasn't heard from the director within a week of receiving the visit information package, the visitor can reach out to the director. At this time, the director should also share visit details, such as their preferred method to do the virtual review, for example on Zoom, plus directions and a meeting time for the on-site visit. Question 2. Director or visitor? Who is responsible for completing the online answer sheets by June 15th?
The director. The director is the only person with access to the online answer sheets. Visitors will receive emailed copies of the answer sheets, and that's it. Jen, Does an outdoor education center have the same answer sheet deadline, even if they're not being visited till the fall?
Great question, Rob. Yes, they do. And a reminder that if you're being visited and watching this training, the individual operationally responsible for the interpretation, enforcement, and compliance of OCA standards is responsible for all components of the visit, including taking this training, filling out the online answer sheets, and leading both the virtual review and on-site visit. If you're not full-time, arrange for board and staff involvement for both components of the visit. Okay, speed round. Who should review the 2021 standards?
Director and visitor.
Who should note any standards answered no or not applicable for discussion during the virtual review?
Visitor.
Who should prepare documentation to show compliance demonstration?
Director.
And who should have a copy of the compliance checklist for the virtual review and on-site visit?
Visitor.
Who should review the camp or outdoor education center's literature and website?
Oh, that one's easy. The visitor.
Ace! Rob, you're all set for the visit.
Jen and I are the first people to review your finalized answer sheets in the summer and fall. When we do, we'll look at whether there were any flags from your last visit. Then we'll read all explanations for any no or not applicable answers and flag any that don't provide enough information for us to understand your operation and why the standard isn't being met or doesn't apply. Answers written as not applicable will not be accepted as they don't provide any information as to why the standard doesn't apply.
Then, we'll track whether 100% of applicable mandatory standards and 90% of applicable recommended standards in each section are being met.
Finally, we'll read all visitor and director feedback, so please fill out the feedback forms. If we have any questions, we'll follow up, most likely with the director.
Once we've finished this initial review and gathered any follow-up documentation, the Standards Committee will do a final review, follow up if necessary, and make visit outcome recommendations to the Board of Directors. Follow-up could include asking for a letter of response, which will require the director to confirm that they will comply with one or more standards in which they are currently non-compliant, or asking to provide further details as to why a standard is and will not be met.
Visit outcome recommendations can include, and are not limited to, reaccrediting an accredited member for 1 or 4 years, accrediting a provisional member for 1 or 4 years, revoking accreditation, remaining at provisional status, and assigning a mentor. There's always an appeal process available, which you can read about on page 13 in the introduction section of the 2021 standards.
Visitors, when it comes to a visit's outcome, it's not your responsibility to decide the outcome of the visit. If there are disagreements between you and the director, please let us know by filling out the feedback form and calling the OCA office.
When will directors find out their visit outcome as approved by the Board of Directors? Most will hear back between September and November. Delays happen when camps and outdoor education centers are not in compliance with all applicable standards. If explanations to no or not applicable answers don't have a sufficient detail, and it is difficult for the Standards Committee and OCA staff to get in touch with the director.
When the Standards Committee reviews answer sheets, they refer to this possible outcomes guide to base their recommendations, also found in the 2021 Standards Introduction.
For each section where the number of applicable recommended standards has not been met, it will count as though a mandatory standard has been answered as no. For example, camps need to answer yes to 90% of all recommended standards in each section. In the Management and Administration section, this means camps can answer no to 2 recommended standards. If the camp answers no to 3 or more recommended standards in that section, the Standards Committee will process that as an additional mandatory standard being answered as no. As a result, a P2 camp, for example, that answers no to 3 or more recommended standards in management and administration will likely receive a letter of response indicating they become accredited for 1 year once they provide a letter of response with a written commitment to comply with the recommended standards prior to next season.
The OCA standards cover operations and programming and are broken down into the following sections: COVID-19, management and administration, human resources, campsite facilities and equipment, healthcare, food service, all trips and excursions, transportation, programming, land programs, boating, swimming, and outdoor education centers.
Hold on, something's changed. There are 2 new sections. Our standards now have sections for COVID-19 and outdoor education centers.
That's right, Rob. Another amendment presented by the Standards Review Committee and approved by our membership with the goal to making the standards easier to interpret and navigate. As you're reading through the standards and evaluating your compliance, it's important to remember that to receive or maintain OCA accreditation, camps and outdoor education centers must meet 100% of the applicable mandatory bold standards and 90% of all applicable recommended standards in each section.
So, if you're in the Management and Administration section and you answered no to 2 applicable recommended standards, that's okay. If you answer no to 3 or more applicable recommended standards in Management and Administration, that will score as an equivalent to a mandatory standard being answered as no. We are going to go through a number of common issues the Standards Committee sees when reviewing answer sheets. It's disclaimer time. Our interpretation of the OCA standards are provided by the Standards and Standards Review Committees and the Ontario Camps Association Board of Directors. In addition to this video, we recommend you read the contextual education for each standard and contact the OCA office with any questions. With a little help from our friend Christina, we're here to explain some common issues we've seen when evaluating answer sheets.
Swimming in a swimming pool. If you're taking your participants swimming off-site where swimming supervision is provided by external aquatic staff, here's a helpful tip. When looking at the swim standards, such as are staff trained in water search and evacuation procedures for each swimming area, and are the water search procedures practiced as necessary, it's your responsibility to sit down with the pool manager and confirm that the applicable swimming standards are being adhered to. Once confirmation has occurred, the standard may be answered as yes.
When days are hot, when days are cold, there's a section in swimming titled Off-Site Swimming. This section is meant to be answered when supervision is provided by an external aquatic staff. If the only off-site swimming is done on wilderness travel programs or at a waterfront or pool where your staff are supervising, this section does not apply. This section would apply, for example, if your camp was going swimming at a local municipal pool.
TR 1.18. If your camp is using third-party off-site facilities for program, have you done your due diligence to ensure they follow industry best practices and relevant government regulations? This standard was introduced as a workaround for camps that take their participants off-site for a non-swimming program that's listed in the standards, like challenge courses and riding programs. If your camp is using third-party off-site facilities in which your staff are not leading the program, you are only required to answer TR 1.18. Don't answer the activities standards in the land program section.
Just in time for snack, my favorite time of day. If your camp or outdoor education center does not serve meals to campers but provides snacks, only one standard in the food service section applies. However, the type of snack further determines the standard's applicability. If your camp provides snacks only or purchased food from a third-party caterer that prepares off-site, are they purchased, stored, and served in a safe manner? In the standards, snacks are defined as pre-prepared and pre-packaged. Pre-prepared snacks are snacks like cheese and crackers, veggies and dip, cake bought at the grocery store. If your camp or outdoor education serves these types of snacks, then this standard does apply and needs to be answered yes or no. Pre-packaged snacks are purchased sealed. Snacks like granola bars, chips, and cheese strings. If you serve pre-packaged sealed snacks only, none of the food standards apply, and you can answer not applicable to the whole section.
Not many people know, but I have a hidden talent: cooking. And guess where I learned to cook? My day camp never served food to me as a camper, but I learned to cook a mean pancake there. Do the food service standards apply to cooking as a camp activity? Yes.
You missed out, Jen. Camp food is the best. For camps and outdoor education centers that provide meals, there are two ways to answer the food service standards. Most overnight facilities hire a caterer that prepares food on site, so all the food service standards apply. Day camps are more likely to purchase food from a third-party caterer that prepares the food off-site, and they only need to answer FD 1.2. Also, if you don't provide meals but the occasional pizza day, FD 1.2 would also apply.
There is nothing like sitting down to a meal cooked over a campfire after a hard day's work. For our camps that operate exclusively with wilderness travel programs, they only need to answer TR7 trip food, not any standards in the food service section. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get back to tending the fire.
Outdoor education centers, sit back and relax here, as this part doesn't apply to you. Everyone else, listen closely. Who are your healthcare staff? Don't think you have healthcare staff? Think again. All day and overnight camps have healthcare staff, even those without doctors or nurses on site. You need to have a minimum of one first aider, and that person is your healthcare staff. So, if you don't have doctors or nurses, any standard that speaks to healthcare staff applies to your first aiders, your designated healthcare staff. For example, is an orientation provided for new and returning healthcare staff? And is the healthcare staff involved in an ongoing evaluation and development of procedures for the medical/healthcare program? These standards would be answered as yes or no, not applicable.
That's right. All day and overnight camps have a health center too. The contextual education defines a health center to also be an appropriate designated area which allows for care and sick of injured staff and campers, and should be easily accessible. A place to rest, for example, for overnight accommodation in an overnight camp, and a place that is easily accessible for parents to pick up in a day camp. Knowing this definition, every day and overnight camp has a health center, and this section's standards apply. Anywhere the standards talk about staff, they are referring to both volunteer and paid staff. We work with camps that are staffed solely by volunteers, and legally, these volunteers are exempt from certain training. However, the OCA is requiring all staff and volunteers to complete the training outlined in our standards, no matter what. This includes occupational health and safety training. This is because volunteer staff assume the role and responsibilities of staff without pay. If volunteers assume this responsibility, they should meet the minimum age and requirements as recommended for the position and should be treated as staff members.
If you rent your site, it's still your responsibility to discuss and confirm with the site manager the applicable standards are being met. For example, does the camp have accurate site plans available on site showing the location of utilities, sanitation lines, and other underground services? Many camps that rent or lease facilities often answer this standard as not applicable. However, the standard still applies. It's important that you or the on-site maintenance staff has easy access to the site plans during an emergency. If there's an electrical fire, for example, you need these site plans to help manage the fire.
If a camp rents from an OCA accredited facility, it is not exempt from discussing the campsite, facility, and equipment section with the accredited camp. Also, just because a site is accredited doesn't mean the camp renting that site is accredited.
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my! With the exception of our zoo and animal camps and related trips and excursions, the threats of lions and tigers are non-existent. But bears, on the other hand, are a threat to many of our camps and outdoor education centers. Some of you operate in an area where there is a very low threat of bears and answer not applicable to the entire section of animal interactions and wildlife control. However, wildlife encompasses more than just bears. The contextual education lists a moose, poisonous snake, rabid animal, as well as a raccoon, coyote, or off-leash dog as wildlife in non-urban and urban areas. I don't know about you, but I've had more scary run-ins with a Canada goose than I ever have with a moose.
Rob, what's the craziest animal you've seen in the city?
I did see some coyotes roaming a school playground in the fall. That was pretty frightening.
Who thought dangerous wildlife existed in urban settings? From camps in the city to camps in the wilderness, you never know what your campers and staff may run into on and off-site, even for a walk around the block. Just like in the animal interaction and wildlife control section, many urban day camps answer the standard, do the trip leaders know and follow the safety procedures if the trip encounters potentially dangerous wildlife, as not applicable, because they don't think of any wildlife existing in the downtown core of a city. This standard is applicable, however, as the contextual education explains that there's potentially dangerous wildlife in urban areas, including a raccoon, coyote, or an off-leash dog.
One last common issue. BT 1.1. Does your camp comply with Transport Canada's regulations for operator and vessel licensing and follow all safety requirements? This standard does apply to non-motorized watercraft like a canoe or kayak.
For the 2021 standards, the Standards Review Committee did a massive restructuring with clearer expectations of what standards apply where for day camps, overnight camps, outdoor education centers, and rental groups. This has been done to make reviewing and filling out the standards quicker, easier, clearer, and more efficient.
The Equity and Diversity Committee made changes such as replacing gender-specific language with gender-neutral language, while the Outdoor Education Committee made changes to the language to be more inclusive of our Outdoor Education Center members.
Changes were made to two COVID-19 standards. The first, CS 1.2. Are you in compliance with the Ministry of Health COVID-19 guidance pertaining to camps? This change was to ensure clarity that camps must comply with specific guidance, allowing for change in the specific documentation title. Number 2, CS 1.3. Are you in direct communication with and are able to comply with up-to-date orders from your local medical officer of health?
MA 3.1. Is your insurance provider aware of all the program types, for example, day camps, overnight camps, outdoor education centers, rentals, virtual camps, or other, your camp runs, and do you have the appropriate liability insurance? You must inform your insurance provider of all the different camp programs you offer. Many camps made the pivot to virtual without checking with their insurance company, putting them at risk.
MA 3.9 is the OCA added annually to your insurance policy as an additional insured, or in cases where your camp cannot, has your camp considered all factors and determined it's not feasible? This protects the OCA and prevents a lawsuit against you from being extended to the OCA. It does not bring the OCA under your umbrella. The board has flagged this standard as consistently a challenge, and specific efforts will be made in 2021 to improve upon this standard. Your input is welcome.
PG 4.1. Have you consulted the OCA virtual camp guidance document and applied it as appropriate to your program? If you can't find the guidance document and need it, just contact the OCA office.
There are also new recommended standards for outdoor education centers that offer curriculum-based programs.
You'll notice that it's mandatory in our standards to have a camp safety plan. There may be times in which the OCA is asking camps and outdoor education centers to comply with standards they're not legally required to adhere to. So, for the camp safety plan, WHMIS training, etc., answers of not applicable because you're not legally required will not be accepted. The Standards Review Committee could shout their love of Ontario Regulation 503-17 from the rooftops. They're always seeking new committee members, so reach out to the OCA office if you're interested. Additionally, they want you to know that they're forming a critical path with enhanced membership input. Remember, these are your standards.
With your devotion to maintaining high standards for organized camping, let's talk about how you can use the standards to prepare during the pre-season. You can review your policies and procedures and combine them with the standards. Directors are encouraged to ask questions to their visitor. A great way to do this is to flag standards in your Step 1 submission of the answer sheets. To flag a standard, answer it as no, with the explanation discussed with visitor. Visitors should look for any flags prior to the virtual review. You can use standards as a checklist for forms and written procedures. You can use standards to train and retrain staff. Directors should give applicable standards to the appropriate staff. Ask whether your staff know where certain manuals and protocols are. If your staff were in a crisis, would they know where resources are and be able to answer questions if you aren't there?
Finally, as an added resource, the 2021 OCA Standards has a summary of standards at the back which lists each standard by section. This is a great summary and it's meant to be shared with your staff.
Please help us. Directors, your Step 1 submission of your answer sheets is due June 15th. Your visitor needs time to review your answer sheets prior to your virtual review, so make sure to submit by June 15th.
A reminder to be clear and give the necessary details whenever answering no and not applicable. The Standards Committee doesn't know your camp when reviewing your answer sheets. As well, standards being answered should reflect your public marketing materials, as the Standards Committee does check your website and social media. For example, if you've answered the cycle sports standards as not applicable and your website has pictures of campers biking, the Standards Committee will follow up with you.
Our standards depend on your honesty and transparency.
If any issues arise, call the OCA office at 647-746-1259. Questions around standards or standards visits should also be directed to that number. The OCA is here to assist you at your camp in any way we can. If you need support or advice with a situation that arises during the summer, we're here for you 24/7. The OCA support hotline number is 416-708-8131. We encourage you to post this number in your camp office alongside other emergency numbers. We're here for you.
A big thank you to you, our directors and visitors. OCA's accreditation program is incredibly important and would not be successful without you.
Now's the time for you to take the Standards Training Quiz. Once your quiz has been submitted, your mandatory training requirement will be completed.
We'll also be having a standards training town hall, so keep your eyes peeled to OCA's emails for a date and time.
Have a safe and successful season, everyone.